Now it is my pleasure to introduce our main speaker tonight, Johnnie H. from Long Beach.
My name's Johnnie and I'm an alcoholic. I'm extremely pleased to be here tonight, fully clothed and in my right mind. And a day never goes by in my life that I don't remember a little day 46 years ago when I came to in a cell in solitary confinement in a maximum security penitentiary, drifting in and out of total insanity. Now, because of a loving God has expressed himself through our program called Alcoholics Anonymous, it's no longer necessary for me to crawl around on my hands and eat like an animal. If I don't get nothing out of this deal at all, I can live with that all the way home. It makes me feel good. Now, I'd like to be able to stand here tonight and tell you without any doubt in my mind that that's where alcohol took me to. God, I'd love to be able to tell you that. That's where I took me to. The only thing that alcohol ever did in my life, it kept me alive long enough to get to Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm as sure as I'm standing here, if I hadn't taken a drink of alcohol, I'd have probably blown my brains out before I was 9 years old. I've always been a misfit. I've never seemed to belong anywhere. I've always been a little tad off center. I've always been a little restless, irritable, and discontented. I've always been a little angry and hostile and a little apart from everything. I didn't realize then, as I've come to understand, that those are the symptoms of the most deadly disease that's ever been known to mankind. My sponsor tells me it stretches back in written history for over 7,000 years. And it's probably killed more people in those 7,000 years than all the combined diseases in the history of mankind. I didn't know I had that. I didn't know what was wrong. I knew a lot about whiskey because everybody in my family drank whiskey. I mean, they were Irish. They had no religion to hold their guilt down, so they just went crazy, those people. They were restless, they were crazy, they would kick each other around and drink each other's whiskey and steal each other's women. And I guess that's the way they did it. I guess whoever survived that weekend was the king for the week. I really don't know how they worked their deal out. But that never seemed to bother me. See, I've always been one of those type of people. I've always been a very violent, hostile person. And I never was one who ever thought anything bad about violence. I always thought it was all right. Nothing like putting your foot in somebody's belly if you want to have a spiritual experience. It's just an amazing thing. But what bothered me more than anything else is that along about Wednesday or Thursday, these people would gather up and put their arms around one another and say, we love one another because we're family. That bothered me. Because I never uttered that word to another human being prior to coming to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous for a long time after I was here. It wasn't in my vocabulary. Just wasn't there. Now, I don't know whether I was born alcoholic or not. I don't know where you get this disease, whether you catch it off a toilet seat or how it comes to you. I don't know. Neither does anybody else. Nobody's ever been able to figure out why alcohol affects me differently than maybe 9 out of the other 10 people who drink it. I don't know, neither does anybody else, why it does that, and it's really not of importance to me whatsoever. All I know is that I looked for a way out of this dilemma a long time before I ever got to alcohol. I think I spent my entire lifetime on a journey looking for the answer to whatever was wrong with me, because I've always known something was wrong with me. Now, I didn't know what, but I knew there was something wrong with me. See, I've always come to understand that it's hard to seek the answer to a problem if you don't know what the problem is. And I don't know what's wrong with me. I haven't got a clue what was wrong with me. I looked up one day, saw my grandmother. My grandmother lived till she was 90 years old. She never took a drink of alcohol or smoked a cigarette in her life. My grandmother wouldn't think it's a big deal. I've been sober almost 44 years. Big deal, she'd say. I ain't had a drink for 90. You know how they are. I told her you should have had a couple, Granny, make you feel better from time to time. My grandmother got everything she needed out of going to church. She got up every day of her life, went to church, and on Sunday she'd get up and step across the bodies, went somewhere, put on her best dress, and she came back, something had happened to her. She was a little lighter in her step, a little easier to being. She danced around these people and cleaned them up and sang songs to Jesus. Now I took a look at that, and I filed that in my keen alcoholic mind. Now for you who are new in Alcoholics Anonymous tonight, this is the only place in the world you're ever going to hear about the keen alcoholic mind. You ain't never ever going to go to an Al-Anon meeting and hear about the keen alcoholic mind. They'll tell you that the keen alcoholic got up last night and peed in the linen closet, but they won't tell you how keen we are. We will. Because I don't know what's wrong with me and I don't know what's better, I think that all I'm going to have to do is go where my grandmother goes and do what my grandmother does. I'd be like my grandmother. I'm not like my grandmother. My grandmother's not alcoholic. But not knowing that, one day I got up and put my hand in my grandmother's hand on an early Sunday morning, and I went over and sat in my grandmother's church and waited for whatever happened to Granny to happen to me, and I don't remember anything happening to me whatsoever. But I knew, though, I've come to understand that there was nothing wrong with my grandmother's church. I do know that. But there was something wrong with the jackass sitting in it, I can tell you that. Me. What I'm doing in that church is what I've did all my life prior to coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, and for a long time after I was here, maybe even a great deal of the time today. I really don't have a handle on it. I'm looking for something way out here to make me feel better in here. And it only goes to prove to me that the problem has always been there. Always been there. One day I sat on the back porch of my grandfather's house watching my grandfather drink whiskey out of a fruit jar. My grandfather put it down, went somewhere, and I picked it up and took a drink of it. That's all I did. The next couple of minutes of my life is what makes me an alcoholic. I'm not an alcoholic because I spent the next 20 years of my life creating mayhem out there in the streets. I'm an alcoholic because I had this abnormal reaction to alcohol. And what I damn near died learning here in Alcoholics Anonymous is that everybody who drinks alcohol doesn't get the same reaction from it that I do. Now, it's not a bad reaction, if you really want to know the truth. If it had been bad, I'd have never drank it the second time. I get sick and tired of people saying, I didn't like the taste of alcohol. It just was bad stuff. It's like bad-mouthing an old girlfriend or something. You know what I mean? Alcohol's the best friend I ever had. It's the best friend I ever had. And it still remains in the back of my mind somewhere that when I can't stand life on life terms, I know what makes the big hurt go away. That alcohol went inside of me that day and kind of stilled the madness is what it did. It's what happens to alcoholics of my type once I put alcohol into my system. Not thinking about it, not reading about it on a billboard, but once I put alcohol into my system, then and only then am I drinking to overcome a craving that's beyond all human understanding and beyond all human help. I didn't know that, because I took a drink of alcohol. And 3 days later, they pulled me out from underneath a bridge and stood me in front of a judge and sent me to the Hutchinson State Reform School. 20 years later, I took a drink of alcohol. They pulled me out of a car in Compton and stood me in front of a judge and sent me to 20 years in the penitentiary. I got drunk and went places. I just traveled around out. I went from reform school to junior penitentiaries to nut houses. Now they call them treatment centers. I'm a little more partial to nut house. It's a little more macho. Come on, for Christ's sake. If you're going to be bad, you ought to be bad. Don't quit drinking because you puke a little. Hang in there. Give it everything you got. Alcoholics Anonymous worked a hell of a lot better when you run out of options. I threw everything I had in the battle and lost the battle and didn't know what I was fighting. I didn't have a clue what was wrong with me. I walked out of institutions from the time I was 8 years old until the time I was 30. And every time I walked out of one of them institutions, I was physically sober as I am at this moment. Not one time did I ever say to myself, Self, do you realize how long it's been since you've had a series of electroshock treatments? Why don't you have a drink? No, I never said that. I never said, have a drink, alcoholic, and go out there and kill your baby brother. Have a drink of alcohol and go out there and tear up them streets one more time and run with them gangs. Why don't you have a drink of alcohol and go out and tear your mother's heart out one more time? No, not one time did I ever say that. I took a drink of alcohol for the reason alcoholics of my type take a drink of alcohol after being sober for a period of time. It's not to get drunk. I never took a drink of alcohol in my life to get drunk. I never took a drink to go out and have a party. Never took a drink to go out and get out of it. That's what drug addicts do. They want out of it. Alcoholics just want to be in it. There's a difference. I took a drink of alcohol after being sober for a period of time just to go, but you see, if you're alcoholic of my type, that's all it takes. Because then I'm drinking to overcome this craving that's beyond all human understanding and beyond all human help. I'm 10 or 11 years old sitting on a street corner in my neighborhood on a furlough from a reform school. I'm drinking a bottle of Marca Petri cheap wine. Most of you have never heard about Marca Petri wine, I can tell just by looking at you. The reason you've never heard of it is because of the experimental stage of the Thunderbird. That's why you never heard of it. I'll tell you how bad that stuff was. It never saw grape. But I'm drinking this stuff, and I don't know if I'm in the right place at the right time, in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm just there. And a guy tapped me on the shoulder and said, you ought to try these. And he gave me some pills. Now, I don't remember saying to him, what are those? Will they bother me if I take them? I just took them. Thank God they weren't X-Lax. That's all I can tell you. I mean, could you imagine some of the discussions you could have in these discussion meetings? Works, all I can tell you. It's like putting the afterburners off on a rocket ship somewhere. It dumps me to some place that I don't ever want to have to go again. A couple of 3 years later, I'm sitting on a furlough from another reform school. I'm on the same street corner. I'm around my little gang, and we're doing what we're doing. We're drinking this cheap wine. We're eating these pellets, and we're smoking a little non-habit-forming weed, probably. And a guy stuck a needle in my arm. And for the next 14 years of my life, I stuck needles in my arm running in and out of institutions. That's what I do. Because I live out there in the streets. And I do what people like me who live in the streets do. I destroy every single thing that comes in contact with me. There's a reason for that, you see. I'm a taker. I'm a taker of things, and I'm a user of people. So therefore, I'm a loser. I'm selfish, self-centered, self-serving, got an ego bigger than this whole building. My entire lifetime was spent before I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. For a long time after I was here, maybe even a great deal of time today, I have no handle on it, without a conscious thought or a conscious concern for any other human being who lived upon the face of this earth. I wasn't interested in you at all unless I had something you wanted. Then when I got whatever it was that you had that I wanted, I cast aside like so much trash, I went on about my business. That's the way I live my life. Oh, I didn't live my life like that one day or 1 week or till the heat got on. I lived my life like that from my earliest recollection of life until a long time after I was in Alcoholics Anonymous. And the sum total of all that is that when I came to in that cell in solitary confinement in that maximum security penitentiary 45, 46 years ago, there wasn't a single solitary soul left upon the face of this earth that would send me a penny postcard. They were all gone. But they should be gone, and I don't have any right to have any of them back. I don't have any right to have anything good and decent in my life just because I walked into a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and got sober and stayed that way. Every single thing in my life that's good and decent in my life is some type of an unearned gift that I received from the God I discovered sitting in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. Not because of my goodness, not because of my wonderness or my privileges. It's just an unearned gift I received from the God I discovered in Alcoholics Anonymous. But that's the thing that stumbled into your meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous on the 4th day of November, 1959. I didn't come here to get sober. I was sober. I came to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous because the institution I was in let women come in there. That's why I came to my first meeting. I came here almost 44 years ago to smell perfume. And I've been honking and sniffing around ever since. It doesn't make any difference why you come to Alcoholics Anonymous. Nobody's got an area on motivation around here. I don't know why I came here, but I really do know why I was brought here. That may have been the attraction that got me to Alcoholics Anonymous, that got me into my first meeting, but it's not what got me to Alcoholics Anonymous. You see, my last time out, for all intents and purposes, I killed me. I ended up in the old Los Angeles County Jail, more dead than alive, strapped down on a bed with a doctor telling me I was going to die and there's nothing he could do for me. He turned and walked away from me, and I laid in that bed all day and all night waiting for him to come back in the next morning. And along about the 3rd day of that nonsense, it dawned on me that maybe I was going to live and not die. I was going to get up out of that bed, I'm going to go to the penitentiary, I'm going to come back out, and I'm going to start that rat race all over again, and God knows I don't want to do that. I want to let you know that there's something in this world that's much more frightening in the world than dying. That's living the way I used to live before I came to Alcoholics Anonymous with no answer. Living in that nightmare of hurting people and tearing up things and ripping and running out there and never knowing when the door's coming down. That terrible, always got any fear of discovery all the time, that you're not quite as tough as you act, quite as tough as you do. You're not as bad as some of the acts that you portray. On and on and on. Your images are false images that you built up to protect yourself so people don't know you're afraid. I have to do that on and on and on and on and on. That's a tough way to live, I'll tell you. And to me, laying in that bed and realizing that I'm going to have to get up out of that bed and go somewhere and live and go back to the penitentiary and come back out and start that rat race all over again, and God knows I don't want to do that. One day, because I knew nothing better to do, I screamed out the only prayer I'd ever said in my life. I said, "Oh, God, help me." I thought for a long, long time nothing had happened, because there's no blinding flashes of light. Nobody come running down the hall with a dozen donuts saying, "We got an A meeting down there." I didn't get up and wander off into the tulip somewhere. I just went to sleep for a little while. And I don't know how many of you ever kicked a 2-year heroin habit, but that's what I was doing. That's the first time I'd been asleep in a long, long time. I'll tell you how sick I was. 2 weeks later, I'm up running around the jail looking for some more of the poison to put me back on the bed I'd just gotten off of. And the reason's very clear to me tonight. In the back of my head tonight, the way it was 40-some-odd years ago, is the knowledge that when I can't stand life on life terms any longer, I know what makes the big hurt go away. Oh, I know that it will work if I could just find the right combination of things. It stays there. And being an alcoholic, or an alcoholic the type the book Alcoholics Anonymous describes, if you put me in the wrong place at the wrong time in the wrong set of circumstances, I'm going to be drunk. I'm an alcoholic. I don't have any more choice about that than I do about flying out of this room. There ain't no choice whatsoever. You know, my little grandmother, who idolized me and loved me from the day I was born, used to pray for me every day of my life. The last time I saw my grandmother, she knelt down at my bed in Manager's Clinic in Topeka, Kansas. I was a bright yellow, about 128 pounds, and I was tied down in this bed. My grandmother was, I came to out of whatever coma I was in or whatever I was in. And my little grandmother was kneeling at my bed praying for me. My little grandmother prayed for me every day of her life. And I'm not saying my grandmother's prayer didn't protect me from some harm, but I'm telling you something that I know as well as I'm standing here. It wasn't until I asked God for help that I could get it. Somehow or other, I had to ask for help. And in so asking, I had to be ready to receive it when it came. And that day in November 1959, when I came to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, I don't know whether I was ready to receive it or not. I was fascinated. I moved in and sat down in the back row where people like me sit. I'm not going to get up too close. Somebody might think I'm an AA member, for Christ's sake. I moved in there and my coat collar up and my shades on because I was cool. If I'd have been any cooler when I got here, I'd have probably froze to death, for God's sake. I don't know what's going on. I look up on the backboard, I see 2 big A's. I thought to myself, I'm in some type of an anti-aircraft brigade. What the hell is this? The guy says, it's Alcoholics Anonymous. I sunk down in my seat. Gangsters weren't supposed to be hanging out with them winos. Then Gangsters Anonymous, or Over-Hip Anonymous, or Dope Fiends Anonymous. Yeah. Dope Fiends. God damn. Makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up when I think about that. Makes addicts seem kind of candy-ass, don't it? If you're going to be bad, you ought to be bad, for Christ's sake. I don't know what's wrong with me. My life had depended on it. If somebody had said to me, you're an alcoholic, I'd have hit them. If they'd have put a lie detector test on my arm and said, you're an alcoholic, I'd have said, no, I'm not. The needle wouldn't have moved. You cannot be something if you don't know what something is. You can't. If you say you're an alcoholic, you've just admitted to having the most deadly disease that's ever been known to mankind, that's going to kill you or drive you insane if you don't stay sober. That's what you're saying when you say, I'm alcoholic. I know they don't say that in the treatment center, but that's what they say. That's what the book Alcoholics Anonymous says I got. a disease called alcoholism. It's the #1 killer in the world today. It's the second leading cause of permanent insanity in the world today, and that's what I got. And when I stand up at a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and say, I'm an alcoholic, or I raise my hand when they ask for alcoholic, I realize and know exactly what I got. That day I didn't know what I was. I didn't know. I'd been given all these different names and different titles that they'd been strapped on me, these different images they'd put around me, but I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm fascinated by these people. I don't understand what they're doing. They'd get up on Sunday morning, they'd leave their families, they'd buy their own gasoline, they'd buy their own coffee, they'd drive 100 miles up those old back roads, they'd spend 2 hours talking to a room full of people who don't want to listen to them. People like me who sat in the back row and made fun of them. Took me a long time to realize how very sick that is. Here I am sitting in the penitentiary. I don't know when I'm going home, and I'm making fun of people who are leaving in an hour. Oh, but I'm hip. I'm so hip the balls of my feet tickle me when I walk. The reason I don't understand these people because I'm a taker. Takers don't understand givers. Because takers don't hang out with givers. Takers only hang out with takers. That's why they're all losers. You're looking at one. They just hang out. They just eat up one group right after another. That's why they have to keep moving all the time, because they run out of people to take from. That's what a taker is, and all takers are losers. You're looking at one. That's why I don't understand these people. Why in the world would anybody do this? Why would anybody get up on a Sunday morning? Why would anybody leave their family? Why would anybody leave their family and go do this? What's wrong with these people? I said to a guy one time, what do you get out of coming up here anyhow? You some type of a sicko? You like to look at the animals in your cages? What's the matter with you? He looked at me and gave me one of them deep AA answers that just drive people like me crazy. He said, well, son, when you can answer that question, you won't have to ask it. You know, I pondered that for a month, trying to figure, what the hell is he talking about? It absolutely drove me to, but you see, there's the secret. When all you people who show up and drink the coffee and put your butt in a chair and think you've contributed to Alcoholics Anonymous because you put $1 in the basket, can understand that you won't be doing that anymore. You'll be showing up early and staying late. You'll be becoming secretaries. You'll become people who set up the meeting. You'll become people who make the coffee. You become people who sweep the floor. You become GSRs. You become central officers. You'll be all these different things. You'll be of service to Alcoholics Anonymous. What I've learned in Alcoholics Anonymous since I've been here is a very simple thing. My old sponsor, Norm Alpa, used to talk a great deal about crossing over some invisible line from controlled to uncontrolled drinking. I don't have any qualms with that whatsoever. But what I've learned in Alcoholics Anonymous by being active in Alcoholics Anonymous, participating in 4 or 5 meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous week for all these years, is this, that there's an invisible line in Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you're an alcoholic of my type and you don't cross over that line, you're going to go permanently insane or die drunk. And there ain't no way to beat the deal. I don't care what your counselor says. I don't care what anybody says. I'm talking to the alcoholics. I'm not talking to the heavy drinkers. I'm talking to the alcoholics. I'm not talking to the people who can take it or leave it alone. I'm talking to the alcoholics who must have a way to live, some spiritual way of life, or they're going to die drunk or go permanently insane. The reason I know that is my book says it. And if I don't cross that line from being a taker to being a giver, I'm going to die drunk. And I got to learn to give a little just for the hell of giving it, expecting nothing in return, not any accolades, not wonderfulness, not happiness and joy, nothing. Just for the hell of giving it, I got to give a little just for the hell of giving it. It's the most miraculous thing that I know of. When I was new in Alcoholics Anonymous, I hear people get up at podiums like this and say, I used to drink, now I don't drink anymore, and everything is just wonderful. So I get back there in the back row where I'm sitting, guess I'm not alcoholic then. I'm not drinking either. I'm as physically sober as you are, Buster, and I'm crazy. God, I wish I was alcoholic, I used to say. If I could just be alcoholic, then all I'd have to do is not drink, and I'd be okay. What I'm describing is not alcoholic. I'm describing a drinking problem. A drinking problem is solved by not drinking, period. So if you got a problem with alcohol, just quit drinking. You don't need to come to these meetings anymore. Once you get your court card signed, you're through. You don't have to do anything in here. You can come and plop your big lazy butts down in meetings whenever you feel like getting in here. You can disturb the meeting, get up and wander around, do anything you want to do. But if you're an alcoholic, like I am, the only answer I've ever found is what a guy told me in a book about a book called Alcoholics Anonymous a long, long time ago. A guy wandered into that institution one day that I knew did 23 flat years in the penitentiary and told me something that all the therapists and psychiatrists and sociologists and criminologists and lawyers and preachers and teachers and coaches never seemed to know. He looked down where I was sitting that day and he said, "You don't have to live like this no more if you don't want to." That's all he said. He says, "You don't have to do it like this no more." Nobody had ever told me that. They've been telling me since I was that high that I shouldn't drink these things and swallow these things and smoke these things and shoot these things. But nobody ever told me how to live without doing it. They just didn't. And what none of them ever took into consideration, every time they told me that, I was as physically sober as I am right now. How many times I wanted to scream at them across the table, "Good God, doctor, don't you understand?" Because they don't. If you're not alcoholic, you'll never understand why I drink. But if you're not alcoholic, I'll never understand why you don't. You ever listen to them? You ever listen to any of them people? You ever they say things like, "Oh, no thanks, I'm starting to feel it." "Oh, I told Martha I'd be home for dinner." I mean, they got all kinds of excuses. I got paid, I need to go home and pay bills. That's a good one. Yeah. I mean, they got more excuses than anything. Alcoholics don't think about things like that. An alcoholic turn around someday and wonder where the last 3 or 4 days went. I only wanted to stop in here for a drink. I just want to get the edge off. It's been a busy week. I haven't had a drink since last Sunday. And it's starting to get, my throat's starting to get twisted up, and I'm starting to be restless and irritable, and I'm yelling at the kids, I'm yelling at the wife, I'm yelling at them at work, I'm restless, I'm irritable, I'm discontented, and I just want to have a drink to take the edge off. And long about next Wednesday or Thursday, he comes to in a jail somewhere. He doesn't know what happened to him. That's the way an alcoholic drinks. I don't know that. Asked this guy one day, "It's this guy that Sunday, how do you learn how to live?" That's all I want. I want to know how you learn how to live. I want to know what it was like to go to bed and sleep all night long without waking up with one of them nightmares in the middle of the night. Without waking up with that scene that occurred to me time and time and time and time again when I was sober. Of standing handcuffed between 2 detectives outside my baby brother's grave while they buried him, looking at my mother across the graveside. I just want to know how you get rid of stuff like that. And the only thing that ever made it go away when I was sober is when I put something in me that made it go away. It blocked off the memories. He told me about a book called Alcoholics Anonymous. He said, "Go get it. I'll go home and pray that you find some part of you in it." The greatest single event that ever happened to me in my life is not coming to Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a good thing, don't get me wrong. Been married to a wonderful woman that I'm in love with. That's a good thing, but it's not the most important thing that ever happened to me in my life. My children being born and my grandchildren being born and my great-grandchildren being born are all good things, don't get me wrong. They're not the most important thing that's ever happened to me in my life. The good life that I live and the business that I'm in and the things that I do in life are all good things. Sponsorship's good, the people that I run with, they're all good things. Don't get me wrong. I don't downplay them at all. They're not the most important thing that ever happened to me in my life. That happened to me in a room in a penitentiary a long, long time ago doing what our program of recovery says is a 5th step. I heard myself say to that man that I was an alcoholic. And from way down deep inside me there came a freedom that I carry with me to this very instant. See, as I stand here before you tonight, I know exactly what's wrong with me. I'm an alcoholic, and I suffer from a disease called alcoholism. I'm not an alcoholic and anything. When I was an alcoholic and something or other, I separated me from you. I was just a little different. I couldn't have this program. And the reason I couldn't have it because I separated me from you. When I became just like you, or at least like the alcoholics who were written in that book, it became my great privilege to be allowed to practice the only program of recovery for alcoholics of my type in 7,000 years of recorded history. That's the only thing that's ever worked for people like me. What blows my mind is I get to do it. That's what really gets to me sometimes. I get to do this. I get to live this good life. It blows my mind. There's 2 lines in our book that's never read here. It wasn't read here tonight. We don't read it in our meetings where I go to meetings, but it's in the 2nd paragraph of the 3rd chapter of our book, Alcoholics Anonymous. They're just little words, but they have more meaning to me than anything that I know of. And the reason why I'm standing here tonight, with all these years of complete abstinence within me and the good, decent life and the peace that I said, is because of those 2 little words, and they happened to me and didn't even know they happened. The first one says that I have to concede to my innermost self that I'm an alcoholic. That means I got to give up the battle. I just got to throw in the sponge, that's all. I can't beat this deal. I threw it in. I give up. I gave up sitting in that room in that penitentiary almost 43, 44 years ago. Long time ago. And the one that saved my butt from that day to this day is the delusion that I'm like other people, or presently maybe has got to be smashed. I'm not like other people. Oh, that doesn't mean I don't go to work. Doesn't mean I don't pay my taxes. Doesn't mean that I don't have friends, that I don't have family, or I don't have business, I don't have nothing, no car. Doesn't mean that at all. The idea is that I'm an alcoholic. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. And the only chance I've got in this world today is not to take a drink. The only chance I got. But you know the funny thing about of myself, I can't keep from drinking. Yet I haven't had a drink today, and I haven't had a drink for almost 44 years that I know of. Isn't that amazing? Why is that? Well, the best that I can perceive is I found what it was I was looking for or felt in that bottom of that first drink of whiskey I felt on my grandfather's porch a long time ago. I get that feeling every single day of my life without taking a drink. But my sponsor tells me, and I have no reason to doubt him, but that's what Alcoholics Anonymous is supposed to do for an alcoholic of my type. It's supposed to do for me exactly what a drink of alcohol does for me, only it's done it slowly over a period of time. It's amazing. I walked out of that penitentiary on the 4th day of June, 1961. I don't know nothing about this world out here. I ain't never spent a day in the world out there in the streets without some type of racket going on, with some type of a drug deal going down, with some type of a gang meeting going on. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have a driver's license. I didn't know how to work. I'd never had a checkbook. I'd never paid taxes. I'd never done anything. I'm armed with the first 9 steps of our program of recovery. And all I want to do is go to meetings. I said to myself somewhere in the 19 months that I was in AA inside that institution that if they allow me the privilege of coming to their meetings, I'll do anything they ask me to do. I'm very pleased to tell you that for over 42 years of my life, I have done whatever it is that Alcoholics Anonymous has asked me to do. As I stand here before you tonight, I can tell you this, I don't know anybody who lives any better than I do. Oh, I know a lot of people who have more things than I do, but that doesn't mean they live better than I do. You know, I've lived all day long, this is amazing, all day today, without wanting anything for myself whatsoever. It absolutely blew my mind. The most important thing for me today to do was to play with my little dog. It's the most amazing thing that I know of. Make my little dog happy. I took my little dog to Petco today. My little dog picked out her own toys. And every time I'm in Petco walking around with that little gray-headed dog of mine, with that little purple leash, and her little purple bows, I'm singing to myself, if they could see me now. I think, God, how lame can you get, Johnny? Jesus. I'm going to tell you. The guy asked me today, he said, what can Alcoholics Anonymous do for me? I said, I don't know what it can do for you. I'll tell you what it's done for me. It's dehipped me. It's absolutely, AA will dehip you. I mean, it'll make you so lame. My daughter says, you're so lame you limp. I said, yes, I am. Thank God I made it. I damn near died here too hip for the world. It's just amazing. I went to a meeting one night. A guy introduced himself as my sponsor. A guy by the name of Norm Alpe, who's dead now. My sponsor for 22 years, the cruelest man who ever lived upon the face of this earth. I said to him, what do you want me to do? And he said, why do you ask me? I said, you just told me you were going to be my sponsor. He said, Johnny, if I can't run my life, what the hell makes you think I can run yours? I said, what do you want me to do? He said, why don't you just do what I do? I said, just what is it you do anyhow? He said, if you do what I do, then you'll know what I do. God, how simple can it get? It's like a monkey see, monkey do deal around here. The only problem with that is you got to pick the right monkey. And you can't pick the monkeys that show up late and leave early. You can't pick the monkey who has no consideration for anybody else in the room but themselves. That's what my sponsor taught. My sponsor used to yell at me, tell me, shut up and sit still. Why don't you get a job, you bum? I told him, I'm not a bum, I'm an AA member. He says, no, you're a bum, bums don't work. Get off of welfare, he told me. I said, don't you ever say that to me again, Norm Alpe, I'll kill you. He says, what do you call living in penitentiary? Self-supporting through your own contributions? What do you mean? He would let me drive a car because I didn't have a driver's license. I said, why is that? He said, citizens like me have a right to be protected from jerks like you, who think you have a right to everything that goes on just because you ain't drinking now. Oh. It's amazing. I used to go to meetings with him. I didn't have a car. I'd have to call him up. Come by, pick me up, Norm? Okay, I'll be by there at 6 o'clock, jackass. Be standing on the street corner. I ain't waiting for you. One hot July night, I thought, I'd tell you it's dangerous when you're about a year sober, you start thinking. Start making decisions based on self. One night, it was hot July night, and I thought, well, he's going to pick me up at 6. We're going to Santa Ana, that little club over there. It's hot. It's about half the size of this room, if you want to know the truth. Everybody smoked. It was a one-car garage is what it was. So I got to think it's going to be hot, so I put on my new tank top and my new shorts, my new thongs, and slicked back my hair, put my shades on, and stood on the street corner and waited for my sponsor. My sponsor drove up, took one look at me, and drove off. I'm going to tell you, that guy here gave me a CD of Norm Alpe's last talk. You don't know how close you came to never seeing that CD. If I'd have caught his car that night, I'd have killed him. I was tired of that. So I called him up like I did at 11, 12 o'clock at night. Norm, he said, what do you want, jackass? I said, Norm, you let me stand on the street corner like I'm an idiot. He says, you are an idiot. You act like an idiot, you behave like an idiot, you're a self-centered idiot. That's the way idiots behave. He said, I want to ask you a question. I said, what do you want to know? I just turned it on him right there. What do you want to know? He said, would you go to church dressed like that? And I said, no, I wouldn't. He says, you ain't going to my church dressed like that either. And I said, while we're at it, let's get on with some things here. You got him, it's midnight, and you got him on the other end of the phone. You don't want to tell him face to face, for Christ's sake. Why do you yell at me, tell me to sit still? He said, Johnny, if you want to go to meetings, you don't want to sit still. That's your business. You ever stop to think that maybe somebody else does? I said, no. He said, I didn't think so. Selfish, self-centered people like you don't ever think about anybody but yourself. Maybe you ought to sit still in every meeting you go to and pay attention to everything in there, because somebody, even though it's not you, may want to hear. You ever thought about that? No, I haven't. It's true. Selfish, self-centered people don't think about anybody but themselves. They're not concerned about the people sitting next to them. They're not concerned about disturbing me, afraid to break somebody else's thought process. They're only interested in their own selfish little motivations for that moment. True. I can't tell you the number of times I've been wandering around out there in them streets, goofier than hell, because it wasn't going my way that day, or I'd done some type of a deal that got me in some jackpot. I guess if it was one of these spiritual giants up here, they'd say, I just said, thy will be done, said the surrender. I don't have the power to do that. When I'm crazy, I'm crazy. It's something I heard in an AA meeting. Matter of fact, the guy that talked to our meeting the other night helped me out a number of times. He talked about twanging when he was in school. And that thing popped into my mind, and I started laughing. That's helped me 3 or 4 times when I'm in some of my self-centeredness out there in the world, when things ain't going my way. Boy, could you imagine where I'd be tonight if I went to meetings on a regular basis with a bunch of self-centered assholes who seem to be bound to get up any time they feel like it and disturb everybody around them because they can't sit still for another couple of minutes. I'd be dead now, because my train of thought's very easily distracted. And my train of thought may have been for whatever was going on at that moment. I may have been able, I never heard that guy twang. If I'd never heard that guy twang, you'd have another talker here tonight. I learned that from a sponsor. I thought he was cruel. I told him one time, I just want to be your friend. He said, you want a friend? Get a dog, Johnny. I'm your sponsor. You turned out to be the best friend I ever had, if you want to know the truth, right up to this very moment. And the reason was, he cared enough about me to want to save my life instead of hurting my feelings. That's what friends do. Friends don't overlook and make allowances. Friends don't say, oh, that's okay. Do whatever you want to do, whenever you want to do it. Friends don't do that. Your enemies do that. You know why we do things like that here? So you won't get on us when we do it. It's overlooking and making allowances. One of the hardest things that I ever learned in my life, I learned from my sponsors, consideration for the rest of the people around me. That's all. Not a big thing to a lot of people, but it's a big thing to a selfish, self-centered, self-serving person like me. It's what's going to save my life. Nothing in the book says that selfishness and self-centered is the root of all my problems. And so it is. I can't tell you every meal I've eaten has been a banquet every day I've lived. I've lived out there on the sunny side of the street. I'm just a basic human being, that's all. I have my character defects, I have my faults, I have my wants and my dislikes and my likes. But one thing I've always remained true to, one thing that I love more than life itself, I love Alcoholics Anonymous and I love its people. I love alcoholics. I want only the best for them. I don't want Alcoholics Anonymous to be any better because I've been here. Not at all. I don't want it to be any worse because I've been here either. I would like it to be just the same after I leave it was the day I got here. One alcoholic talking to another alcoholic to get them to do things that they don't believe in, that will allow them to live some type of a normal, decent, spiritual, useful life in this world. This self-centered, self-serving world that we live in, this is my little ray of hope for my grandchildren and for my great-grandchildren and for my great-great-grandchildren. If they ever have to come to Alcoholics Anonymous, I want them to have the same opportunity to get sober that I had in 1959. Guy said to me the other day, Alcoholics Anonymous has changed, hasn't it? And I said, how can a set of spiritual principles change? They can't change. They were the same today as they were in 1935, one alcoholic talking to another. He said, no, it's changed, the fellowship. And I thought about it for a while, and I said, yes, it has in a way. He said, how's that? I says, when I got sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, the men had tattoos and the women wore earrings. So it has changed somewhat. But I don't know if anything I've said or anything Carl said make any sense to you tonight. Don't like this, just go to another meeting. I'm by no wild stretch of the imagination a consultant, a counselor, or authority on a program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm an example, good, bad, or indifferent, to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous works, that's all. That had been necessary for me to drink anything or smoke anything or stick anything in my arm since sometime before the 4th day of November 1959. And every 11th thing I have in my life I owe to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Everything. Everything I would ever hope to have in my life, I will owe to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And dear friends, you better believe this. But for the grace of God, AA and good friends like Kevin, I could have missed it all. Thank you.